Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to give people another minute or so to just filter in. So we'll be starting promptly at around 1:01. So we will check in with you then. Hey. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We are so happy to have you. It's a rainy afternoon here in Toronto. So from wherever you are joining from, hopefully you are staying warm and safe. But today we are going to be talking about Google Ad Grants. So if you have been following our webinar series with Google, you've noticed that we've actually touched on a few of these topics in the past, but now we're going to be diving in a bit deeper. And we're very, very happy to have the Google team here with us today. Both Natalie and Ben are going to be joining us, and they're going to be teaching us a lot of really great things for ad grants. But before we get started, we definitely want to do a few things just to get some housekeeping out of the way, as well as a land acknowledgement. So our team at Canada Helps is grateful to have the opportunity to meet and work on many Indigenous homelands across this land that we share in Canada. As settlers on this land, it's important to acknowledge that our Vancouver offices are located on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people. The Montreal offices are located on the Kanien'kehá:ka Mohawk territory. And the land on which we operate in Toronto is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We want to express our respect for the territories we reside in and honor the diverse Indigenous people who have lived and worked on this land historically and presently. We, the staff and leadership at Canada Helps, are committed to being active participants in reconciliation. We're committed to continuing to amplify Indigenous voices and learn how our work affects Indigenous people. Now, a few housekeeping matters before we dive into the presentation. If you're having any trouble hearing us, there's a few things that you can do to remedy the situation. First, turn up your volume on your computer all the way up. And then you could also try clicking the sound check under your audio in the GoToWebinar panel that pops up. Select that little speaker tab and then turn the volume on the speaker to the far right to the max volume, and hopefully we should be coming in loud and clear at that point. For the best webinar experience, we ask that you close all other applications, not only for attention, but also for the performance of the platform. And before we get this flood of questions, yes, we absolutely will be sending the links and the webinar slides, as well as the recording to you within 24 hours. So you'll be able to watch the recorded video on demand and then have all of your questions answered that way. And then finally, you can hear us, but we can't hear you. So if you have any questions, type them into the questions log at any time. I'll be monitoring them on the back end. When the team at Google has time, they'll be taking a look there as well, but there will be a question period at the end of this presentation. So feel free to throw in all of your questions there and we can go through as many of them as possible. All right, with that said, I'll pass it over to the Google team, and I think I'm going to be handing it over to Ben. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Wise. I'm here with my colleague, Natalie. We're super excited to be here. Natalie's going to be doing most of the presentation today. She's our Google Ads expert. I'm going to provide a quick introduction on the Google for Nonprofits program. And just a little bit of background context on today's webinar. Phil mentioned that we have done a few in partnership over the last year and a half or so. And so we have done some content on Google Ad Grants last year. And the feedback that we got was that it's a lot of really great material. It's a lot of interesting stuff and very valuable for nonprofits across Canada. But there was just so much covered in the tool in the course of a 1-hour webinar. So our plan this year is we've taken that kind of 101 and broken it into 3 separate sections. So today is going to be the first of those sections, and stay tuned through Canada Helps on hearing about additional webinars going forward. So just to dive in a little bit onto the topic of Google for Nonprofits, to give you a background of the program, I don't need to tell this group that nonprofits are changing the world. The role that nonprofits play in society is enormous, and in many cases provides a lot of essential services that are left as a gap through the social safety net. But at the same time, running a nonprofit is not easy. And I'm very deeply involved in the Daily Bread Food Bank, so I get to see kind of upfront, up close, a lot of the challenges that come with running a nonprofit. So the idea of how do you organize the around your mission, how do you collaborate, how do you manage all your volunteers? Daily Bread has about 10,000 different volunteers. How do you raise your awareness, and how do you do effective storytelling in a market for attention that is extremely competitive, that Natalie and I see every day in our day-to-day jobs? It's very difficult to do that. And ultimately, you're a nonprofit, you run on your fundraising, those are the dollars you need. So how do you use the tools available to you to drive donations so that you can keep doing the amazing work that you do? So Google created an organization or a program called Google for Nonprofits. It was founded in 2011, and the mission of this group is really to help to empower nonprofits to focus on your mission, so that the people and causes that you are committed to helping get all of your attention. And Google is in a position to help make some of those things easier, so you can put that focus where it's most needed. So since we've launched the program, it has gone global. We have a very significant presence in Canada. We are active in nearly 70 countries, and we have touched over 350,000 nonprofits across the globe, which is pretty amazing. I think the number in Canada is around 7,000 right now. So quick plug, if you're not on the program, please quickly Google it and sign up. There's a lot of great free stuff for you that we'll get into how to make use of. And just a quick overview of what some of those services are that come through Google for Nonprofits. And I'll cover these four. The first is Google Workspace for nonprofits. So this is free or discounted access to using Google Docs, Gmail, Google Calendar, all of those that we actually run our multi-billion-dollar business on as the kind of software to help you run your organization at a reduced cost. The second one here is ad grants, and that's obviously the main topic of today, where any nonprofit with a few restrictions on that will receive $10,000 or up to $10,000 a month US in credits for Google Ads. So this is a huge amount of money. It's over 6 figures a year to spend on Google search campaigns to help drive activity and behaviors that you want, primarily going to be donations, but finding volunteers, raising awareness, and there's a ton of different things. The next two here are a little bit more US focused, but I do want to mention there is a YouTube program for anyone who has operations in the US, and anybody who is heavily reliant on Google Earth or Google Maps. There's an additional kind of credit and access you can get as a nonprofit there. The one thing that's not included here is the Google Analytics platform. It's not here because it's free to everybody, not just for nonprofits. And we will have some webinars specifically about using Google Analytics for nonprofits. I think the first one is slated near the end of this month or early May. So stay tuned for more on that. So that's just a kind of Google for Nonprofits program in a nutshell in under 5 minutes. Please, continue to check it out online. A ton of great free stuff that hopefully makes your lives easier and your organizations more powerful. And with that, I will pass it over to Natalie to walk you through the first bit on Google Ad Grants.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. I wanted to take a minute to introduce myself. So I'm Natalie. I actually have a nonprofit background. I worked at SickKids for 8 years, and then more recently made the leap to join the Google team. So I'm very excited to talk about this topic and help all of you really try to take your annual plans and transform them into something greater, something to make a bigger impact. So when I worked in the nonprofit space, there's one thing that I really felt the nonprofit community had in common, and that was a connection to the cause and really a desire to deliver a strong impact. And so when we think about that, this $10,000 that you get a month allows you to do that. It allows you to amplify your reach. It allows you to amplify your messages and achieve your goals. So just so that we're all aware of what really that means is when someone searches, we're creating campaigns to show up in that paid search section, so the top section. And if anyone's like me, if you find the answer in the first two, you're going to click through, and that will be kind of the best results. So with all of that, we'll dive in and spend the next 45 minutes or so really going in depth on how do we set the right foundation and how do we set up the right campaign to achieve success. So I wanted to make sure we're starting right at the beginning. So at this point, I imagine that everyone signed up for their Google Ads grant. If you haven't, you can go to google/grants.com or google.com/adgrants, I believe, and you can fill out that. Then from there, that's where we're creating the campaign. That would be the next step to make sure that you're showing up in those paid searches. So I mentioned that you're using your annual plan. At least when I worked at a nonprofit, this was kind of our source of truth and something that we put together that really helped outline what was most important, what we wanted to do in that next year. And so that work's already done, hopefully. And you can pick up those goals that you had already established for this upcoming year, whether that's driving donations or getting newsletter signups or volunteers, whatever it might be. I'm sure that your organization has a ton of goals. And campaigns support goals. So it's really important that when we think of setting up a campaign, it's all about supporting that goal for you. And then, of course, a goal is only as meaningful as how we want to measure it and what success looks like. So these are the types of things that we'll talk about to make sure that we're setting up the campaign successfully and right for your business. So this is a view of, before we get started in anything, really picture yourself as the user and what is the flow that they go through. So they complete a search, they view an ad, they click the ad, and then they arrive at your website. So then now what? That's the type of thing that we really want to consider. What does success look like? What do we want to measure? Is there a button? Is there an action that we want them to take? And that's really what's super important before we set up any type of campaign. So there's a lot of information on this slide, but it's all to say that there's a ton of different actions that people can take when they click your ad. So I know maybe the most common example might be making a donation. That's the action that you want to take. There's also other things like volunteer sign up, clicking, like watching videos, really anything. And so a conversion action is an action that you've defined as valuable to your business. And we want to track those to make sure that we're optimizing and making the campaign work towards those actions. And this is just a list here on the side of what it could be, but it really could be anything. So for this entire example, I've used donations because I thought that will be most relevant to the larger group. So if you think about it, the objective would be drive online donations, and then maybe the action that you're really interested in is, did they arrive at the thank you page? Did they complete the donation form? That's where really it shows, yes, they did the action that I wanted them to take. Okay. So we've kind of given some context as to what the conversion actions are, why we need them. Now we can actually go right into the platform. So if you want to follow along, it would be ads.google.com. And this is where you can sign in and you should see this view. So at the top there's tools and settings, and you'll have to click under measurement and add conversions. The reason why it's super important to do this first is because we need to tell our campaigns what it is that we want them to track, what it is that we want them to measure. So if you skip over this step, you'll likely get stopped in the flow and won't be able to continue creating your campaign. So you should see this button here. If it's not this exact button, the user face is sometimes changing. It could be a plus blue button, but look for something like this in your view. And then you arrive at this page. So this page really says, what is it that you want to track? Is it tracking on your website? Is it through an app or through phone calls? For example, if you're tracking phone calls as an action, someone clicked on a button, you may click that. But again, for the example that we're going through today, you'd click website. And this is where it's tracking things like, did they make an online donation? Did they click a certain link? Did they sign up? All of the actions on the website. Okay. So now we've selected that. Now you have the opportunity to actually type in your website to scan if there's any conversion actions that are already set up. So this is a helpful first step to see, okay, where are we at? Is there anything already set up that I can take advantage of? In most cases, it may not be set up. So that's where you'd click the add a conversion action manually button. And that's the flow that we'll walk through shortly. Okay, so I'm going to break down every single one of these steps so that we can clearly understand what it is and how they're meaningful to the overall campaign. So at the top there, really picking the category, what this does is, again, it tells the system what you're optimizing towards. So things like purchases or signups, there will be a drop down there. Then in terms of the conversion name, this is something that you pick. So make sure that you can identify it later on. And when you think of the conversion action, it doesn't need to be for just one specific campaign. If this is something that you want to track and that would be meaningful for the long term, you don't need to have it campaign specific. And what I mean by that is you don't necessarily need to call it holiday donations. You can call it donations across the entire year if this is relevant for a longer period of time. The next section is on value. So when we think of these actions that we're defining as success and that we're tracking, we have the option to say, what is the value associated with this action? And for this specific instance, we'd use the same value for each conversion. So what we're saying is that every time that someone goes through the flow, we're going to value it at a certain amount. So this just educates the system to say, okay, this is the set value for this conversion, and it helps us later on as we decide on how much we should be paying for each of these actions that we want the system to take. When I think about what the value should be, consider something like your average donation amount here. This would be a good ballpark to set for this section, knowing that it could be kind of above or below. This is a good benchmark. The next is count. And when you think about count, it really depends on each conversion action. So you have the option to either count every single action that is taken. So for example, counting every single online donation that happens. And you would definitely want to count, if someone's giving 5 donations, you want to count that towards the campaign. Whereas if in some situations, you may only want to count the action once. And so that would be like a newsletter sign up where you're not going to want to, if someone signs up 5 times, you may not want to count them 5 times when really you're only going to be sending them that one email as part of the newsletter subscription. So really think of what's meaningful to your business and choose based on those two. And then this next section is based on conversion windows and attribution. So how long do you want the system to look back and give credit to potentially the action that was taken? So these are the default settings here. Really for search campaigns, it's most important to focus on the click-through conversion action. So it says, it's basically looking at a larger window to see, did they take an action within this time frame? So really this is the best practice, but you can go up to 90 days. And then next you'll select done here. So you've gone through those steps. Now you should see that your conversion action has been created. Now to make it tied to your actual website, you'll have to add a snippet of code to that page. And this is typically not a super complex task. And so whether it's something that you do on your own or partner with your IT team, this is something that you can add relatively easily. So just selecting that snippet of code, then once it's there, it can recognize when the actions are taken. And then you're done. So we've gone through the conversion action, and now before we start creating the actual campaign itself, we start thinking about the structure. So really we want to think of who are the types of people that are going to be searching, and what are the themes that are bubbling up. And this is really helpful to understand how we should group kind of the organize or all the account. So the way that campaigns and account structure work is we start at the account level, so the account that you've created, then you have campaigns and then ad groups. So ad groups are based on keywords consolidated together. And again, they're based on themes. So if you have similar themes, you'd want to create a unique ad group for that theme. These are a couple themes that I know have come up in my past life of really having someone donating in honor is very different than someone maybe donating in research or something like that. So that would warrant different themes, different keywords. And then when we get to the campaign level, that's where there's more decisions made in terms of what type of budget do we want to dedicate here, what's the bidding strategy, and if you have different locations that say you wanted to do geo kind of based messaging, you may want to set up different campaigns this way. The reason why I've broken out brand and generic is that oftentimes people like to understand this behavior quite differently and bid differently. If you think of it, someone that's searching for your brand or your organization is very interested in taking action because they've already know exactly what they're looking for. Whereas if someone's looking for a generic term, just donate or charity, they may not decide between you or another option right now. And so that's why people choose sometimes to bid and organize their campaigns differently. But you can absolutely consolidate them together and have them as one campaign. That's not a problem either. Okay. Actually, one other thing, I'm going to flip back. One other thing here is you can update the messaging. So say if you had a donate money and bucket, and that's where it's all about donations, but you had a holiday campaign, and then you also had another type of campaign, you can still have it as that ad group and change out the headlines and the content depending on when it's relevant. You don't necessarily need to do something completely separate unless you feel that it's really a completely different theme with different content. Okay, so I feel like we've gone through some background details now. We've really understood the importance of setting up a conversion action, the structure of the campaign, really pulling out those goals and what matters most from the your annual plans. Now we're ready to get into the platform and start really building out those campaigns. So picking out what are the campaign settings that we want, what type of keywords, and the responsive search ad itself, plus site links as an asset. So again, if you want to follow along, you can go to ads.google.com, and there should be a plus button showing adding the conversion or adding the campaign, adding a new campaign, I should say. So you should see a view like this. This is where you have the option to pick your objective. So everything, again, that we do is really rooted around what is your objective, and we want the campaign to be focused on that. So in the instance of setting up online donations, it would be sales. And then this section below is where you see your conversion goals. So what you just set up, that will show up there. If you don't see it, then you can go back to your conversion section under the measurement tools and then measurement, just to make sure that everything's set up according to plan there. So next, you have the option to pick what type of campaign. For ad grants, you pick the search as the type of campaign. And then next, you have an option to select what do you want it to do to reach your goal. And you can pick multiple options. Then there'll be drop downs to fill in a little bit more information so the system knows and can scan your website. Next is the campaign name. This can change afterwards, but you may want to think of how you want to name the campaigns so that later on, if you want to filter for similar campaigns, you can. So say if you did decide to break it out by brand and generic, having those names in the campaign name to say, okay, I want to search all of these types of themes versus all the generic campaigns, that's an option to do so. So there is some benefit of having similar naming nomenclature. Okay. So now we dive into some of the more meaty aspects of setting the campaign. This is, in this next stage, we really think about the bidding strategy. And this, as you think of search campaigns, it's all about an auction. So when we think about the bid, it's saying, how do we want to bid when we have our keywords available? So the different options are things like conversions, clicks, conversion value. And this is really saying, do we want to bid towards clicks, which means I really care about just having someone click on my ad? Or when you say, I want it to optimize towards conversions, that's saying something like, I want you to bid in a search towards someone that's actually going to get to the final donation page. So oftentimes that's a more meaningful for organizations to say, hey, I'm gonna pick and choose where I want to actually show up in the search ads. I'm going to show up and bid more when it's based on a conversion. So that's what we'd recommend here. And then next is the networks. So of course, by default, you're able to show up in the Google platforms, but then we also have partners. So we have search partners and display network partners where you can expand your reach to really show your ads in more areas. So this is often something when people want to reach even more people, they're not getting enough of the results that they see. This is where they opt into these options. It also allows the system to optimize and figure out where's there the most efficient traffic or way to spend your dollars. Next is the locations. So this is where you have a little bit of flexibility. We really need to focus on relevance here though. So what is most relevant to your organization and where do you think that your network of people that might be donating are located? Sometimes it's, especially for a donation, it's not necessarily in close proximity to where you're based. It doesn't need to be necessarily Toronto only, because there's people that could donate all over, but figure out what's maybe most meaningful to you. You could use some of your existing data to see where are people donating today. That's one option, but try not to be too narrow to kind of limit the number of people that you're reaching. If you had a different type of goal for this campaign, say you wanted volunteers, that might be an example of where you want a tighter location. So you may not have someone volunteering in person if they're in another country or super far away. So these are the types of things that on why this matters. Okay. Next up, we have the option to pick who is it that we're targeting. So really understanding when people search, the keywords are really the biggest engine on how you make your ad to show up. But then next you have the opportunity to target specific audiences, or you can monitor how specific audiences are also performing that are searching your ads. So typically we recommend that you set it as an observation, so you're not limiting the system in any way to say only show my ads to these type of people, but instead you learn and get the insights of who are the types of people that are searching for my keywords. And it's not in this deck, but where you find this information afterwards is there's a tab called audiences. You can find this information here if you have this, if you've selected audiences. So the types of audiences are quite large. We can go from anywhere from affinity audiences, which is really focused on people that have an interest in a certain topic. They're broad buckets. And for an example, one of the affinity audiences I definitely suggest for you to add is charities and donations, I think, donations online. So that's definitely something that I'd consider adding. And then another option would be to upload your first party data. So if you're able to upload that, you can see who of your existing audiences are searching for your data and how are they behaving? Are they clicking? Are they converting? That's some really interesting information, but definitely it gives you the option to browse and search through. So look through, and there's no harm if it's of adding too many audiences, especially if it's under the observation lens. Next, there's the option to explore dynamic search ads, and dynamic search ads are really an option where it's your ads are triggered without keywords. So we'll put that on pause for now, but it is an option to say, how do I make sure that I serve my ads and content to people that are maybe interested in the content, but I don't have, they're not covered by the keywords that I have in place. So it scans your landing pages to see if the content is relevant for the query that is being searched for. Okay. Next here, we add the keywords. And so there are a couple things important to chat about keywords. The first is you can scan your website and it will pull in what suggestions that it has for you. And it says the level of competition there, what the bid might be for that type of keyword. There's a lot of detail there. And it's also really helpful that if you've already set up a campaign, it says what keywords are already created in your campaign. So this is under tools again, tools, and then it's called Keyword Planner. And so really using like the importance of having the keywords related to your landing page is extremely important. It goes into how likely you are to show up in a search ad and how much you will have to pay for that overall search ad. So having that connection to the landing page is a great starting point. If you want to add in manual keywords, you can also do that. And you might have heard of the different match types when it comes to keywords. There are 3 different match types that you have the option of choosing for. So there's an exact match type, which is you want exactly what the person is searching for. You will only show up for that ad if they're searching for that exact term. The next option is phrase, which is you set up a string of words, and the search that someone has includes those keywords. And then there's broad match, which is a more recent match type that is really truly amazing. It takes advantage of more signals to understand what is the intent of the search. So it really looks at other signals like what are the other landing pages that people have gone on to understand if they're searching for the right thing. So I'll use an example of if someone says donate, it will understand the user's browser history and other signals to understand, is it interested in something donating for what maybe matters to your cause or less relevant? So I definitely recommend broad match to expand your reach and try to find more relevant people looking for your business. The other thing to call out is that the Ad Grants program has some policies around single keywords. So you're able to use single keywords for both, like for your brand, for terms like donate and charity and things like that. But really there's some policies around that to make sure that we're being really relevant and showing your ads to the right type of people. So that's on the Google Ad Grants community under FAQs. If you're not aware of that, definitely check it out. If not, it'll be flagged and you're encouraged to pause that keyword to make sure that you're only using relevant keywords for your campaigns. Okay, so I've done a lot of chatting, and so I thought it might be nice to share a short video that really summarizes the responsive search ads in a concise way. Context here is responsive search ads pull in a lot of different headlines to formulate what's best for the user. We previously had expanded text ads, and that's no longer an option. This is really the future on how can we get the most out of our search ads. So I will play this video.
Responsive search ads simplify the creation and management of search ads to ensure that customers see ads that are customized to what they're searching for. Using the power of machine learning, responsive search ads mix the headlines and descriptions that you provide to automatically test different combinations and learn which perform best. You can turn to Optimization Score to either implement responsive search ads or improve existing ones. For this video, let's get started by selecting a search campaign and clicking the Ads and Extensions tab on the left. Click the blue plus button. Select the responsive search ad option, and then choose an ad group. First, define your final URL. This is the page that the ad will direct customers to. You can also define a display URL. This is the URL that will appear when the ad shows. Now it's time to get creative and write your headlines and descriptions. The more headlines and descriptions that you provide, the more combinations machine learning can generate. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the ad strength tool. You'll see one of the 5 different ad strength ratings when you work on your responsive search ad. No ads, poor, average, good, and excellent. Along with these ratings, you'll see action items in the following areas to help improve the effectiveness of your ads: diversity, quality, headlines, description, and keyword relevance. Make sure your ad reaches a good or excellent ad strength score. Use the ideas provided by the tool to boost your score. While some repetition is fine, the best way to improve your ad strength is to add as much unique content as possible. When assembling ads, the system tries to combine headlines and descriptions that offer new information. If you're already running expanded text ads, try including your top-performing assets in your responsive search ads. Keep in mind that headlines and descriptions may appear in any order, so ensure your assets can work together in any combination. For more step-by-step videos on Google Ads implementation and optimization,
Awesome. I'm just getting back here. So hopefully that was helpful to really articulate what responsive search ads are and the options that you have available. So some of the key takeaways that I had was adding more headlines is really helpful because it gives the system the opportunity to match as many as possible and figure out what's most relevant for that user. Including keywords in the headlines is a great way to make sure that it's relevant. But as you can see, the ad strength is really helpful to let you know where there's opportunity to improve, where you can improve, and where you can swap things out. And when you have campaigns live, you can go to the asset details and it shows you how they're performing on every single headline. And so you can understand which headlines to swap out, what to replace. One thing that I learned was when I worked in the nonprofit, we were really focused on protecting the proven and testing the unknown. I think that this is a perfect opportunity to have your proven headlines, use things that work, and have the opportunity to test things that you've maybe never tried and see how they're responding. So the one other thing to consider that I believe was mentioned in the video was that you should have the ability to mix and match the headlines and descriptions. So don't focus too much on the perfect combination between a headline and a description. The system and machine learning will pull in what's most relevant for the user. Okay. Next is creating an ad extension, and extensions recently got renamed to assets. So in the actual platform, you'll see it as ads and assets, not as an extension label anymore. But really what this does is it gives you the ability to become even more relevant for the people that are searching your ad. So if they search donate and your ad shows up and your ad is driving to a donation page, you have the opportunity to share more information that they may also be interested in. So I've included some examples here of maybe one of the site links is ways to give. So they're searching donate, but they haven't actually determined what it is that they want to give to. Providing these additional options, again, increases relevancy and helps with the overall user experience, driving these people to your site and ideally taking action. So the rule is to create at least 2 of these site link assets, but you're allowed to create up to 4. So if you have multiple content on your site, then definitely consider adding more site links so that you become even more relevant for the user. You can also understand who's clicking on the site links, where this traffic is coming from, are they converting. You get a lot of detail as you go into the assets tab. It will show you how many times, what was the impression count on these site links, and more details so you understand how they're working. Okay. Next up is the budget piece. So at the beginning of this presentation, we spoke about the $10,000 that you have a month. You really have the flexibility to split this up however you'd like. So if you break down the $10,000 on a daily basis, that's about $330. You can allocate it all towards one campaign if that's your choosing, or you can split it up based on different campaigns. So if I think of really this account, it's up to you on how you want to prioritize it. And if you have one campaign, again, you can put all the budget, or if you have one that's higher priority, you can put in like 80% of the budget. It's up to you. From here, then you should be able to publish the campaign, and you've officially developed your first campaign. So I want to spend just a little bit of time highlighting the takeaways in each of these stages, because we did go through a ton of content here. So when we talk about defining goals, I would say lean on your annual plan. You've already done a ton of work to understand what is it that's most important to you, and don't reinvent the wheel here. So look at those, think of them on an annual basis. Then next would be setting up tracking. Again, super important to make sure that we're tracking the right things. So add those snippets to what matters on your page, and you'll be able to see what actions people are taking. And again, this is a critical step before setting up your campaign. Showing relevant ads. This, in my opinion, you can constantly be updating this. So this is something that you can go back, revisit to make sure that you're as relevant as possible. So when we talk about relevant, it's, again, how relevant are you to your landing page? And one way you can check this is looking at the quality score of your keywords to understand, am I having the right keywords in place, matching the destination that I'm driving them to? You'll get a score out of 10. You may want to just consider, how are you ranking? Are these the best keywords? And you can always reiterate whether that's changing keywords, changing headlines, really focusing on what is it that people are searching. You can also look at search term reports to understand what are some of those keywords that are most successful. I don't think I mentioned it when we were on the keyword slide, but another piece of it is making sure that you have about 5 to 20 keywords per ad group. So that's kind of the golden rule there to make sure that you're, again, being relevant. Leaning into smart bidding. So again, we talked about bidding, of really choosing on what is it when we go to that auction, what is it that we want to tell the system to care about? Is it about clicks? Is it about conversions? Is it about conversion value? And this will allow the system to bid differently, and really says, okay, I'm going to bid in a smart way, using different signals based on what matters most to you and your business. So it will know to bid more heavily on someone that's more likely to convert or take to make a donation. And then lastly here is learn and improve. So this is a really, like, again, it's an iterative process on how you can improve and really use the results that you're seeing today to get the most out of the campaigns. Something that's really amazing about the platform is there's a recommendations tab that surfaces a ton of opportunities unique to your business. So you can look there, and it will give tips to say, improving your responsive search ads, or where maybe there's not enough budget and there's even more people looking for your content. It gives you a lot of great signals on where to go next and what to do. And there's little help articles on every single recommendation to explain the recommendation in more details. If you're also, while you're in that tab looking at the recommendations, it's helpful to play around. There's something called auto apply. You can look at that, and that's where some of the maybe more mindless tasks If you want the system to do it on your behalf, you can check that off. So something might be like duplicate keywords or non-serving keywords. So if you have a keyword that's in there and it's not working for your campaigns, you can clean up the account automatically by clicking those options. So I've just started to scratch the surface on what's possible. There's a ton of information once you get started. So I hope that this was helpful, and I will pass it back to Ben to close us off.
Awesome, thank you. One of the reasons I think I love doing these webinars is I'm not a search expert, and I get to tap into search experts like Natalie, and I have sat through a few of these webinars, and I learn a ton every time. So thank you, Natalie, for all the work you put into this and sharing so much great knowledge. I just want to spend a couple minutes closing out on some additional resources that are available for everybody. So the first one here.
Oh,
yep.
Apologies. There we go.
Is the Ad Grants Help Community. Reality is, with 350,000 plus nonprofits, we're not able as Google to have a one-on-one relationship to support everybody. But if you have a question, or if you have a challenge or something you're working on, odds are there's somebody else in that community that has faced that before. And I'll get to this in a second. One of the questions in the panel, I literally, while Nat was talking, I searched the community and was able to provide them an answer. So it is this I would say is your number one stop anytime you have any questions. So that's the first one. We'll share the link as a follow-up. And then on the next one here is our YouTube channel. So the Google Ad Grants team, who are mostly based out of the US, has a very extensive YouTube channel where they go into all sorts of things, from very high level 101s to extremely detailed, there's that one in the middle. What is maximized conversion bidding? So, the nitty gritty of individual buttons and tactics, all the way to how to get your launch your first campaign. So if you're new to this and you want to learn more that you haven't learned today, then this, I think, is just a wonderful resource of kind of short, medium, and long videos that will walk you through everything. And then I think last on our resources here are a couple key links. So the first one on the left-hand side, the grants website, that's a great starting point. If you have signed up, you've probably been there. If you haven't signed up, that would be where you go to get started. There's the link to the Ad Grants online community that I mentioned, and the YouTube channel. Then we also maintain a directory of Ad Grants certified professionals. So people who have gone through a certification program with Google to show that they have the kind of technical knowledge and skills and experience to support. And if you're looking for kind of third-party or external support, that is a great way to find someone. And then on the right-hand side, Google runs a program called the online, I think it's called Google Online Challenge. It's actually been renamed in the last year, so I apologize if I get that wrong. But essentially, it will connect you as a nonprofit with a group of students who are looking to learn digital advertising and volunteer to spend some time with you and help you get set up and help you optimize some of your first campaigns. So if you really want to do this, but you just do not have the time, that's a great way to get some external support through a volunteer network. And then again, kind of the customer service and the help center are always there as options as well. So I think that's it on the resources. Happy to open it up for questions. We did get one through the panel while Nat was presenting, and I've replied. Thank you, Lydia, for your question, but I do want to just kind of share with everybody. So it says, why is it asking for credit card info if I'm a verified nonprofit? So as I said, I went into the online community, I typed the question in. This seems to be a common thing. You do not need to put your credit card information in on your Ad Grants account. That is only for a paid account, and those would be two separate things. And if you are coming across that challenge or you're being prompted, you should avoid doing that, because I think it will convert your grants account into a paid account, which is not what you want. But if you are there and you can't find the exact kind of buttons to click to proceed without doing that, I've shared the link with Lydia, but if you do that search on the online forum, you'll get the answers of how to do that. So I think that was the only question that came through, but if anybody else has any other questions for Nat or I,
yeah, there's Sorry to cut you off. So there's actually a few that are coming in right now. I can
Okay,
read them
perfect.
off. So one here is from David. I think you kind of touched on one possible solution to this one, but I'll read it out here. How many hours does it take to set up, and how many hours per week or month on average for ongoing maintenance of an ad grant? Do you have any recommendations for small organizations with limited staff capacity to invest lots of time into Google Ads?
Yeah, I can take that. So I think that looking at the account twice a month is a good starting point. So setting up the campaign, it really depends on how much detail you want to set it up front. I would say spend an hour. It might take longer if you're less familiar with it. But then once you're set up, looking at it on a like twice a month is a really good starting point. Again, looking at the recommendations tab usually highlights where there's the most opportunity. So you don't need to do a ton of digging. It will highlight if there's something where you can do more or different. I think as you become more familiar with the tool, then you'll find more and more nuggets. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. I know that nonprofits are lean teams. So again, just build those skills over time. There's no need to have a set amount of time to make sure that your campaign's successful.
And the one thing I would add there, and I think we'll get into this in a little bit more detail in future webinars, is the tool has a lot of automation tools that are built into it in terms of automating your targeting, automating your bidding and your tracking. And so the kind of product vision is to make it as easy as possible and as low maintenance as possible. And while it's not perfect, it is certainly better than it was a year ago and not as good as where it will be a year from now. So, you know, shameless plug, come back for the next webinar, because we will be going into those into a bit more depth to make sure you're getting the most out of those optimization and automation tools, so that you don't need to spend that kind of time knowing that you probably are balancing a whole lot of things on your plate at once.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, we had another one here from Megan. So our organization focuses heavily on affordable housing. So our attempts on ads, our attempts at ads seem to automatically get flagged for violating policies. How should we handle this?
Yeah, I think that if you're getting flagged for certain policy reasons, it usually says the policy flag that you're being flagged for. I would read into that to see, okay, am I in fact being flagged? What's going on here? Then if you're able to make any changes, make the changes, and then you can appeal the process. So I would do that as your first step. Oftentimes there's small little tweaks that when you read through the policy, there's something that you can change just slightly or differently to make sure that you're compliant, and then you can appeal it and it should be able to show. The other thing is that it might be flagging from a policy standpoint is looking at those single keywords. So making sure it's not one of those keywords that or outside of the single keyword. So that might be another reason. But if not, I'd say you can always call support once you've flagged it to see why you're continuing to be flagged for this policy reason.
Great, thank you. I have one more over here that just came in. So are small government funded organizations eligible for the ad grant?
There's a full, slide on eligibility of who is eligible and who's not eligible. We can share that in more detail, but I believe that there's like a full step in terms of who gets approved. So I'd say go read through the who's eligible section of it to see. And then as you go through the process, they'll show what your status is of the application. So I can speak to like who's not eligible. So hospitals and health care organizations, schools, academia. So I would say apply, and then if you're not eligible, then it will flag accordingly.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's everything for now. Yeah, no other questions have come up on our side.
Awesome. Well, I'd definitely encourage you to play around in the system, look at the recommendations tab. And as Ben said, there's a lot of great content to come. So highly encourage you to join some of the other sessions as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben and Natalie, and thank you all for joining us today. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will be sending out the slides as well as the recording to all of you, so you can follow along and make sure that you do everything according to Natalie's instructions here as well, and play around with the system and get the most out of it. So look out for that email, and also please do join us for the next webinar, so you should get emails for that coming shortly. All right, well, hopefully you all have a great rest of your day, and we will see you for the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.